Hello, I am Fernanda Paiva, Hitchhiking Stars. Welcome to my channel, and today we'll be talking about Venus. And as you know, probably, that's why you're coming across this video, Venus is going retrograde on the 23rd of July. So from the 23rd until the 3rd of September, we're going to be having an opportunity to look into everything Venus related in our lives, astrologically speaking, and to think about how to use that in a better way, how to integrate Venus in our lives a little bit more, and an opportunity to rejiggle things, to redo things in the Venus sort of in the Venus arena of our lives, right? So this is going to be part one. I decided to do this video in two parts so we can make the most of it together, and I can make the most of my energy as well. So part one, we're going to look into Venus as a principle. We're going to be discussing what Venus is about. We're going to be looking into a lot of different possibilities of what astrological Venus represents in our charts for ourselves as well. And then on part two, we'll be looking into Venus in the houses based on the ascendant. So we can go through that journey with a little bit more energy. So this is part one, and we're going to be looking into everything Venus related. And massive inspiration and shout out to Sue Tompkins, the Contemporary Astrologer's Handbook. And if you haven't got this one, if you're beginning your journey with astrology, that's a very great book. I mean, there are many other great books as well that I can tell you about. But this is the one I have on me while I'm doing all of these travelings and all of these videos as well. So therefore, that's the one I've been using the most. So without further delays, let's look into Venus. So Venus, from the astronomical perspective, and some of the information that Sue Tompkins discusses in her book that I find particularly relevant to our video, or that I found a bit curious and I wanted to share as well with you, is that Venus is apparently the most nearly circular planet, and that's where the idea of female roundness comes from. Now, I know that at this moment in time, there are some discussions, some very interesting discussions about astrology and gender bias, like how we use feminine and masculine and etc. Those are very valid and important discussions, which I am actually quite interested in, but that's, I think, because astrology reflects culture. And so at these cultural moment in the West, we're sort of beginning to discuss this, or we have been discussing for a few years, whereas in the past, this discussion wasn't as much present. So for many, many years, astrology has been connected, has been connecting Venus with the female principle, with femininity and the feminine inside us, right? So another thing she says is the Venus is the slowest of all planets when it comes to rotation. And so it in a way reflects symbolically the laziness that can be connected with Venus as well. Venus is about where we are a little bit lazy. We'd rather attract someone to do that for us than go and get it done ourselves. There'll be Mars, right? Mars is how we go get it, how we go get it done, how we make things happen. Venus is how we get others to do it, how we attract others to do what we want. So it does reflect a sort of a lazy quality in a way. Another cool sort of fact here is that Venus has phases seen from the Earth as well, and that sort of resonates with the Moon as well. Is because of the distance, it was quite close to the Earth. So it resonates with feelings and the phases of feelings that the Moon also represents. So again, there is this sort of resonance from this perspective. There's this sort of resonance with feminine qualities as well. Now, the orbit around the sun is 225 days. So every 225 days, we'll go around the zodiac and we'll potentially have our Venus return, which is when Venus comes back to where it was when we were born. And it's still with a very slow rotation. So the rotation of Venus is, whilst in the Earth, we've got the 24 hours thing. With Venus, we've got 243 days. So it's very slow, right? It's almost like it's larger than the sidereal period, than, you know, going around the sun. So what is very important to us here, and is the last piece of information about this, is how often it retrogrades. So no more than 43 days in a year, and some years not at all, according to Sue. So 43 days in a year, we're going to have this opportunity, we're going to have this chance to have a look at Venus, to reintegrate Venus, and to rethink anything that's related to that planet, right? So I thought it would be cool to add here, when was the last time that Venus was retrograde, and just to think a little bit about, the process. What I find very useful about astrology is to look into the bigger picture, right? Is to look into the timeline of our lives and to have an idea from the bigger picture what's going on, what happened before, and how we've worked with this before. So for you to connect your own dots, I'm going to share with you when was the last time that Venus was retrograde, and that was the 19th of December 2021. It retrograded at 26 degrees Capricorn, and it went all the way to 11 degrees Capricorn until the 29th of January 22. So between December and January 21, 22 was the last time that Venus was turning retrograde, was the last time that we had these opportunities that we will have again on the 23rd of July. Now, the last one before that, because I had to have a look at it as well, because I remember it was during the pandemic. It was the 13th of May 2020. So from 13th of May 2020 until the 25th of June 2020, we also had a Venus going retrograde, and that happened in Gemini. So it happened between 21 degrees to 5 degrees Gemini. Another curious fact here with these retrogradations, so try to think about what was going on for you. Where were you during the pandemic, May? I mean, you probably were at home somewhere. You were in the what was it? The lockdown. So you're in lockdown somewhere, and what was going on for you? Were you in lockdown with your partner? Did you have to rethink the relationship? Did you actually get close to somebody? Because I know some people that had to be with a person that they barely knew as well, like people that they were like dating, and they started doing lockdown together because of the circumstances. So that's the kind of a curious thing to try and remember and see what was going on for you. Where were you? Because what happens when we have a planet going retrograde in the sky is that, like I said before, we have an opportunity to rethink everything related with that planet, but it also reveals what is our personal relationship to that planet. So where is Venus in your chart? What aspects Venus does in your chart? And where is what house is Venus placed as well? We'll have a lot to say about how you experience this retrogradation. So if you think about these two different periods that I just said, can you find anything in common? What was going on there? And, what came up to you? Where were you in the process of integrating Venus and expressing Venus in your life, which is, the point here. Now, one more thing that I want to say about these previous cycles, let's say, of Venus and the retrogradations, as well as that. I observed something interesting there as well, because in 2020, when Venus was retrograde, it happened whilst it was in a square to Neptune. So that cycle had something to do with Neptune as well, and the dreaminess, the illusions, thinking about our Venusian romance, the romantic fantasies maybe that we had at that time. And in 21 to 22, it was conjoined Pluto. So when Venus turned retrograde, it was conjunction to Pluto as well. So I think Pluto was at 25 and Venus was at 26 Capricorn. So we had to kind of look into the sort of more Plutonic issues connected with Venus as well. Our obsessions and our urge to be more deeply connected and intimate with somebody, maybe. I don't know, try to think about what was going on there for you. And this one that we're going through now, that we're about to go through on the 23rd of July, will be square to Uranus. So we had Neptune in 2020, we had Pluto in 21, 22, and now we're going to have Uranus. So something about space, personal freedom, authenticity will also be connected with this transit of Venus as well, with this square square from Venus to Uranus. So I just thought that was something cool to share here with you as well, that we'll have something to say about this retrogradation period. Now, let's move on to what I have to say here about Venus. And I've got all into sections. I am going to put timestamps everywhere, so you're going to be able to skip back and forth and explore with more depth whatever it is that speaks to you, that you feel might have a connection to your personal experience here, and what you're more curious about Venus as well. So I love to say a little bit about the mythology and some of the characteristics of the mythology of Venus that will represent what Venus has to say in our charts as well. And there are many deities that are interconnected. They do represent, the goddess of beauty and love and etc. And we got Venus for the Romans, Ishtar for the Babylonians, Freya for the Nordics, and Aphrodite for the Greeks. And in the Greeks, Aphrodite was decided by the fates that her role was to make love and encourage others to do so. So Venus, in a way, presided over the survival of species. And I know how I talked about Pluto talking about survival, but here is preservation and survival of the species through lovemaking. So if we don't feel attracted to people, people don't feel attracted to each other. And if there is no lovemaking, then there's no continuation of the species, right? So I thought that was something cool to think about in relation to Venus, that I didn't think about before, So when I was looking into the book and to Sue Tompkins, I thought, okay, that's kind of an interesting perspective here as well, that she somehow has a connection with the survival of species as well. So attraction is not just for the validation of the attraction, but it does also have something to say about that. Aphrodite, in one of the stories, was born from the genitals tossed by Saturn. So Saturn tossed Uranus' genitals when he castrated it, and from the foam, the word Aphro means foam in Greek, Venus emerged. So it was born from that. And interestingly as well, Aphro has also a connection with the word aphrodisiac, which means getting in touch with our libido and, with the attraction and magnetism and all of that. Venus and Aphrodite has also a connection with jealousy and rivalry a lot in mythology, as a trigger, of jealousy and rivalry, jealousy of other goddesses for her being the most beautiful goddess, but also herself feeling jealous as well, and, having that sense of competition there. And what Sue Tompkins says, which I think is very relevant, is that this is always usually present in our love stories as well. And there's nothing more attractive than someone else being attracted to a potential partner, and that sort of sense of competition, speeding things up, right? Seeing who's going to win, who's going to conquer, who's going to get that person first. But that sense of competition usually being behind as well the love affairs, and trying to compete for someone else's attention, etc. And I think that this sense of competition in love is usually fairly present in people that have Mars Venus in aspect in their natal chart, with Mars being a connection to, or having a connection, reflecting a connection with competition, and going for what you want. So that sense of splitting things up when it comes to love affairs, and that has a connection with the mythology as well. Now, enough of that part of mythology and enough of that part of the astronomy of the planet and, what the planet itself has to say about Venusian cycles. Let's dive in deeper into what are the themes and the colors and the what is Venus related in our charts, or astrologically speaking as well, that we will have an opportunity to look into. So all of these different topics can potentially be revisited during this Venus retrograde, and it depends on your personal life. What is your personal relationship to those? Some of them you might be like, right, this is actually quite easy for me to express, that's not a problem at all. But some others you might be like, yeah, that's a little bit trickier. And that's what you can do during this retrograde period is to look into, revisit, redo, rethink, reanalyze, look at again, think again about these principles and how you can best express it in your life. How can you integrate it in your life, right? So the first one that I have here is enjoyment, pleasure, and happiness. So Venus will be reflecting our nature, our capacity for enjoyment, for appreciation of beauty in ourselves, in the world, in others as well. That's all reflected by Venus. And also how and where we get pleasure in life. So this is going to be connected with Venus. Is your Venus in the first house? Is your Venus in the 12th house? Is it in Pisces? Is it in Virgo, in Sagittarius? All of that will give a specific clues. And remember, again, astrology as detective work. So all of those are going to give us precious clues about how capable you are to feel happiness and joy and pleasure and to share that with others or not. If you're a bit more conservative, if you're a bit more reserved in that area as well of your life. So it's where and how we get pleasure in life. What we enjoy doing, that's going to be reflected in Venus in our charts as well. What gives us joy? What brings us happiness? And I think that with this Venus retrograde in Leo, this is very, very under the spotlight because Leo talks about joy. Leo talks about happiness as well, the inner child. So this is going to be very, very under the spotlight there. The joy, the happiness. How do we do that? How do we make others happy as well? How do we offer happiness to others? We'll all be in the package, wrapped by Venus and the Venusian principle as well. So how easy can we accept? We're a bit cynical and we're like, is this person trying to, do something for me, but do they want something in exchange or, etc. So the words pleasing and pleasure are all Venusian things, and they're all connected with Venus, and they're all connected with the mirroring process that Venus also represents. And if you look at the glyph of Venus, that cross, upside down cross with a ball on top, it looks like a mirror. And that's another observation by Sue Tompkins, which I thought was like, oh yeah, it does look like a mirror. So it has to do with the mirroring process. The Venus. So moving on, I'm going to keep going from theme to color and, ideas. So here we have also the feminine principle. So the feminine principle, and I got a question mark on the side because of those different ideas around gender and how astrology can be gender biased as well, which I think is very worth asking these questions and thinking about these questions as well. But traditionally it is related to the feminine principle, and the feminine principle is a maiden and femme fatale. So we're not talking about the motherly principle, but that sort of attractive female or female attractiveness as well. And this is an interesting discussion there, which I'll leave it open, really. I mean, yeah, I am very interested in looking into things from a new perspective in a different way, but I'm also fond of certain traditions and the traditional as well. And I can see why the roundness of Venus is connected with the roundness of femininity. And I'm not saying that the round shape is only connected with the feminine, but pregnancy, for example, and that sense of roundness, or even the periods, the menstrual cycle as well, and how round we get just before, getting our periods. And I do see that, and how usually, the masculine principle has this leanness to it, whereas we're a bit like softer, but it's not a rule, it's not an absolute. So that's why I got a sort of a question mark there, but it is connected with a sort of a softness and the feminine principle for, any gender, really. So Venus is also connected with the principle of giving. So how do we give? How easy it is for us to give or not? How difficult it is for us to give? That's also going to be connected with Venus. So our desire and capacity to give, it can be money, it can be time, affection, can give way in dispute as well. How easily do we give up a fight and we say, right, okay, you're right, it doesn't matter, etc. So that's going to be also reflected by Venus. Passivity in fight, not really being interested in fighting and just compromising, that's Venus right there. Sharing, how easy or difficult, what aspects of yourself or possessions are easier to share or more difficult to share. This is all reflected by Venus and your natal Venus in special. Our ability to accept as well, accept something. If someone wants to give us something, you know, that's an interesting topic, really. And I think it was something that I've noticed, you know, before, how hard it was for me to accept compliments. And you know, having a Venus in Virgo, which is traditionally connected with fall, it is something that I observe. As much as I love to work with astrology from a constructive perspective, I can see where these ideas of fall and exaltation come from, which again is something that we can question, that we can look at from different perspectives. But I somehow can see from experience how this could be playing out. You know, it's like having a Venus in Virgo means that I somehow have to work a little harder to express the Venusian principle or to appreciate the Venusian principle in my life. I tend to be a lot more rational, more analytical. So enjoying the sensual pleasures of life, for example, yes, because it's an earthy sign, but it somehow doesn't come very easily and natural. You know, there's usually a mind that comes first, and I do enjoy thinking and I enjoy ideas. That's kind of, you know, what brings me happiness and enjoyment are Virgoan things, perhaps. But there is a sort of a sense of finding challenging to accept compliments, or, you know, something that I was talking about with my partner, in fact, how I've never wanted to be known for my beauty or to be recognized, to receive recognition for how I look, but for my intelligence. That was somehow more important to me from a very early age, was something that I already realized. And that whenever I was in a situation where I got a lot of looks or I called an attention because I was wearing something or because I went to a hairdresser or I had makeup or whatever, there was a real sense of discomfort connected with that. So I don't know, just saying that, you know, as much as I love to intellectually play around with different concepts of how planets can still be empowered, being in fall and etc., I can personally say that, you know, this sort of Venus in Virgo has manifested in ways that, you know, was challenging, let's put it that way, when it comes to the Venusian principle. Let's leave it at that. So the ability to accept is also involved in our Venus, and what, you know, what condition is our Venus in our charts as well. Our talents and accomplishments, including money as well, are this is a great idea, actually, and that's why I wrote. So talents and accomplishments and money, our talents are a way of loving as well. So loving the world or loving others through our talents, which are reflected in Venus as well. So our talents can be reflected in Venus because it's something that we enjoy and it comes natural, it comes easily to us, right? So she gives an example of gardening and how people can enjoy our pleasure for gardening by admiring our flowers and, you know, our beautiful gardening as well when they walk past. So that's connected with doing what we please as well, doing what brings us pleasure, doing what we please. And that's something that Aphrodite, she would only do what pleases us or what pleases her. So Shopping is also connected with Venus, because we usually shop for what has value, right? We're going to buy something that we value. We're not going to buy something that we don't really value. Sharing reciprocity will be there as well, with the principle of giving. Next one is how we give and receive affection. That's a very Venusian thing, and you can really think about that. We can analyze that. Here comes the Venus in Virgo during a Venus retrograde, so you can reassess that. Are you getting the affection you want? Do you feel your needs are being met in this relationship? And I know that needs are a word that we usually connect with the moon, but our Venusian needs, do you have the same love language? I think that's a very important question there with Venus going retrograde, and to think about what is your love language based on the Venus in your chart. The element of Venus, the aspects that Venus does, will also be something that we can do during this retrograde period. So how we give and receive affection. Venus will describe how we feel about being close to another person and how we achieve this. Is it easy? Is it difficult? I think, again, it has a connection to love language. A Venus-Saturn will be a lot more cautious. A Venus-Neptune will be less discriminate. Sometimes to their own detriment, excuse me. And again, that's coming from a Venus-Neptune. But yeah, is it easy? Is it difficult? Is it important to you? Is it physical contact important to you when it comes to demonstrating affection? Does your partner do that to you? Etc. So those are some of the questions there for you that you can ask. Venus has a connection with love and intimacy as well, how we get intimate. So there are different types of love as well. So erotic love, fraternal love, spiritual love, maternal love as well. And Venus is the significator, or at least the co-significator, to all these different kinds of love. Venus will also have a connection to our social interactions and how driven we are to socialize or to share ourselves socially as well. So peacemaking and our urge for harmony and peace, and how well can we achieve that, will be reflected in our Venus. And this can also be very much reflected in planets that are ruled by Venus in our chart. So all of our Taurian planets or points, if you have an ascendant in Taurus, or Libra as well. So planets in Libra will also have a strong urge to achieve harmony and peace and etc. And it will have a kind of a Venusian, it will be ruled by Venus, right? So how well can we achieve peace and harmony? Cooperation is under this umbrella as well. And how well can we cooperate or not? How resistant we are to cooperate. Suf talks about the civilizing effect, which again, I put it in brackets and a question mark as well. And I'd rather think about the civilizing effect as a sense of belonging as well, right? Because civilization, manners and courtesy and, the need to be liked and loved is somewhat universal, right? What is polite in one culture might be very impolite in another culture, but it doesn't mean that they don't have their own codes of politeness and belonging and liking each other, right? So in certain cultures, burping right after a meal is necessary because it shows that you really appreciated the meal. So the idea of civilization and being civilized is very different amongst different cultures. So I just really wanted to throw this here as well, but it's more about a sense of belonging and recognizing and being liked by recognizing different cultures and etc. So because politeness increases good feelings between people. It's like when someone does something that is in a certain culture is a code for being polite and amicable, then you will receive a warmer response, right? And that's going to vary in different cultures. But that's, my Jupiterian nature here, throwing the cultural bit here as well. But the shadow side of that politeness could be being overly or the shadow side of Venus as well could be overly sweet, fawning behavior, you know, people pleasing, and that's the shadow side of Libra as well, as we have discussed in previous videos as well. A tendency to flatter, and flatter is a way of getting what you want, and that can be a good, valid strategy, and it can be also manipulation, right? Being very manipulative and trying to charm your way around. So lazy overindulgence is also the shadow side of Venus, and vanity could be also the shadow side of Venus. I mean, vanity, you know, being vain. One thing is to look after yourself and to take care of yourself, and another is to overindulge in that potentially. And vanity from Latin means empty. So that's also the shadow side of Venus, you know, someone that's extremely Venusian and Venus driven, you know, being more image concerned. It's like all image and no substance, potentially. So using charm to get what we want is very Venusian. And that, with that saying, we can catch more flies with honey, right? That's very Venusian. And I know highly Venusian people that you know, it's hard to say no to them because they have this ability to disarm you with, you know, charm, and you go, why not? You know, let's do what you want to do. Cool. So the next one is jealousy, rivalry, and self-valuation. That's also all potentially connected with Venus and Venus in the chart, because when we have passionate feelings towards somebody, it's usually difficult to feel secure as well, safe and secure. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying that's usually the case. So when we're falling in love with somebody and we're feeling very passionate towards that person, that's usually when there is a little bit of a jealousy going on there as well, because we don't feel safe and secure yet. So the equation is insecurity plus desire equals jealousy, right? So self-valuation and worth is also a Venus sort of function in our charts as well. How well do we see ourselves? How much self-worth are we capable of practicing? If that makes sense. So this is also there in a mixture. And I think this one is such a key one for a Venus retrograde, you know, to look into how well we are at treating ourselves and valuing ourselves, our time, and, you know, having that sense of self-worth in check as well. You know, are we setting the bar to how we want to be treated by treating ourselves that way as well? Or are we expecting people to treat us well when we are not doing that ourselves? You know, those are all valid questions to have during Venus retrograde. So again, values, that's a very important theme connected to Venus, and will be very much under the spotlight during these Venus retrograde transit for us to look again, to think about it. And values are also connected with a sense of self-worth, because if we are going against our values, we are also damaging our sense of self-esteem. You know, we're not doing and sticking to things that are really important to us. Oh, this is such an important one. I mean, I can't stress how much this is so fundamental. I mean, I've been thinking about it so much in the last couple of years. You know, what are my values? What do I stand for? What makes life worth living? And how do I want to do my daily life, but also my big questions, you know, my big decisions based on, you know, what are the things that are the real non-negotiables for me, you know, in terms of going against my values. And, you know, this is such an important soul searching, you know. I feel that is a sort of a life journey, really, because values also change with time. And I think this will be reflected by transits to our Venus, by progressions as well connected with Venus, and etc. But I don't know, I think since my Venus progressed over Saturn, I started kind of having a real like, wow, okay, hold on a minute, what are my values, you know? So those are some of the questions you can ask yourself during this retrogradation as well. How aligned with your values are you? And also obviously money, with the values, there is also money, because money is something that we attribute value to, right? And I mean, that can also be in our second house and the ruler of our second house as well. But Venus is a natural ruler of all of that. So how do we deal with money is a Venus thing. So if you've been having problems with money, not making enough, but spending too much, you know, your belief systems around money is also something that you can rethink during Venus retrograde, because it sort of is a natural ruler of that. So are you tight or are you a big spender with money? This is all there. Is it easy for you to make, or is it easy for you to spend? Which one is easier, you know? How or on what do we spend is also going to be revealing of our values. Do you spend a lot of money in makeup, or do you spend a lot of money in courses? You know, I have a Sagittarian second house. I usually am a lot more guilt-free, like when I spend money in like Sagittarian things, traveling or during travels, or in courses and educational things as well. So some of the things, you know, in the book as well that are connected with these point here is like, when we are well paid, we feel valued and we value ourselves more as well. So how well paid are you? How much do you charge for your services? If you are self-employed as well, you know, it will be definitely revealing of your sense of self-worth. If you're not an apprentice anymore, you know, I mean, I was very much undercharging for services for many years as a sense of, I'm an apprentice, I'm learning, I'm still learning, there's so much to learn, etc. But then eventually I had to look into that a little more deeply and think about this sense of self-worth. I was also on the way there of, you know, not charging for services because not feeling worthy. And so all of these questions really became very urgent as well. So looks and income and an ability to attract love, this is all going to be there in our Venus, you know, clustered around Venus in our charts, and connected with our sense of worth as well. How good are you at attracting and, you know, attracting other people's, you know, at your own look, by looking good, or attracting love into your life, you know? And those are all things that trigger jealousy in people, in ourselves, you know, amongst each other. So again, that sort of Venusian flavor there. And here is a quick definition of values. Again, you know, and trying to make lists of what your values are is such a great activity to do during this Venus retrograde. And values is, quote, what is important to us and reflect priorities, beliefs, moral principles. I know that beliefs and morals are usually connected with Jupiter more than Venus, but I think it's a kind of a Venus, there's a gray area there, Venus, Jupiter thing, you know, but a really great time for us to get in touch with what are our priorities, what are our values, what is really important to you. Is it freedom? Is it responsibility and accountability? Is it authenticity? You know, it's like during these soul searching, for me, became really clear that authenticity was the one that I really wasn't willing to compromise when I'm doing something, or when I get a job, you know, potential for a job and etc. It's like, do I have to compromise my authenticity? Because if I do, then this is a no-no. So it's a way, you know, making these lists is a way to find what is your non-negotiable, and that's like one of your top 3 values. And again, that's something you can do during these Venus retrograde. So again, how we attract others. So our attributes that others find attractive and admirable will be in our Venus. What do we have that others want or find attractive and valuable? but also, again, target to jealousy and envy, you know, something that others feel that they don't have, that you have, but they don't have. That's, again, a Venusian thing. A curious thing that she said is a connection that Venus has with magnetism. And with magnetism is an attraction. So whereas Venus is connected with attraction, Uranus is connected with repulsion. So when you have a Venus Uranus, what happens there? You know, when you have a Venus Uranus in your chart, there is usually a hot and cold romances that come into your life. You know, the push and pull is very much part of the love life. You know, I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you have a Venus Uranus natally, and perhaps this cycle will be very much about that, you know, the hot and cold, the attraction, repulsion, you know, in general in our lives, and where is that in our lives as well, you know, the something that we really want but we also repulsed by it, you know, we want but we don't. I don't know, like, do you feel that that's, and maybe this could be connected with the Big Leap as well, this book that talks about our sort of our ceiling, you know, we all have a sort of a ceiling of like what we used to, like, how success look like for you, you know, because if it's too much of that you can't take it yet. It's like we have to do this work to accept certain things, you know, to accept a level of love or a level of money, you know, that after that that's uncomfortable. And so maybe that's the repulsion thing there, you know, it becomes uncomfortable. That level of love is like, whoa, I can't take it. I don't know, I digress. Okay, so Venus in our chart is also related to tastes and values again. So tastes and values, but values in connection to our taste. I prefer this rather than that. I don't like this, you know. You will rarely see me dressed in pastels, for example, because that's I don't value pastels as much as I value strong colors, you know, strong greens and reds and etc. and blacks. So that is connected to our capacity to compare and evaluate and make choices. So who or what we value most? Is it the vanilla flavor or the chocolate flavor? You know, which one do you value most? That will be a reflection of who you are as well. So it says a lot about who you are. And what we value is a way of defining ourselves as well. Do you value loyalty? People out there with Venus in Scorpio, is that one of your top values? You know, loyalty and you know, someone being there for you, being honest with you, and you know, someone that you can trust, which is something that's so challenging for Venus in Scorpio, probably. So that defines you somehow. So let's think about our values. Let's take it seriously during this Venus retrograde, because it's really, really important. And in fact, Sue Tompkins says that this is one of the, is reflected by the sun being so close to Venus as well, you know, it's the sun reflecting a sense of identity and Venus being so close to the sun, astronomically speaking. So self-valuation is intimately linked to the extent to which we are able to live according to our value system. We won't be able to value ourselves if we're not living a life that's aligned with our value system. That is a really, really important one. We feel bad about ourselves when we act contrary to our values. That's really important. You know, when I have to pretend, so because I already said that authenticity is one of my top values, it's like when I have to pretend, I feel ridiculous. It's like a charade, it's ridiculous, I can't do it, you know, like how, and you know, I'm not even saying this in like morally speaking. For some people, you know, my partner is a double Gemini, and for him it's really easy to just go along, and I'm not saying he's not authentic, but it's very easy for him to play along in certain situations, which we had this conversation before. It would be easier, you know, to just be able to play the game and, like, you know, do certain things just to get on, you know, I don't know, I can't think of an example right now, but like he can play certain roles in certain situations without feeling ultra violated, whereas for me it's like an ultra violation. And I think that has made certain situations in my life harder, like I lost lots of jobs, and lots of jobs, like lots of waitressing jobs, when I was doing waitressing jobs. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. But there is this real sense of like feeling very, very bad when I'm going against that, value. When I'm not being integral, for example, when I'm saying or when I'm doing something that goes against, when I'm not being integral, when I'm not walking my talk, it's like I feel violated as well, Anyhow, okay, so Venus has a relationship to how we dress as well, to the choices we make, the clothes and etc. That's all Venusian. Our personal style. Do we dress? I love this question that she asks as well. Do we dress to please ourselves or to please others? That's going to tell a lot about who you are as well. And how happy are you about that? Are you doing that unconsciously? Or are you doing that consciously? I mean, again, like I used to dress to please myself, like Mars in the first house, South Node in the first house is like, I'm gonna dress because I want to dress this way and I'm gonna do it. And I'm getting to a point, and probably during this Venus retrograde, I'm going to be rethinking all of that. I started thinking about personal image, personal brand a lot more, and like dressing in connection to how others perceive me as well, because it's not just about the knowledge I have and getting a master's and knowing that I have the knowledge, I have to look the part. I have to look like a professional, So then that pendulum, is swinging a little bit to the other side of like, will others think about me based on how I dress as well, and how can I find the mid ground? Dressing in ways that please me, but others at the same time as well, I don't know. Are you in that place as well? What's going on with you in that regard? But definitely Venus is connected to how we dress. Arts and music as well. So Venus will relate to arts and music, but from the perspective of harmony. Venus brings harmony to a musical composition or a picture, that we're painting or something. Has got to do with beauty and harmony, right? Which, some art doesn't have necessarily anything to do with beauty and harmony, and they're not that sort of Venusian driven, let's put it that way. Is more Neptunian type, so it's more about transcending reality and etc. So when it comes to shape, Venus relates to soft, round, and sweet as well in terms of flavor, and it's a sweet tooth will be a Venusian thing. So people that have a Venus prominent will usually have a sweet tooth. My partner has Venus exalted or Venus in its own sign, so he's got Venus in Taurus, and definitely there's a very powerful sweet tooth there. So let's talk a little bit about Leo before I end this video and do part 2, which will be about Venus in the houses. But because Leo will be the flavor that this Venus retrograde will bring to us. So Venus will retrograde from the 28th degree of Leo down to 12. I wanted to say up, but it's not up, it's down. So from 28th degree of Leo to the 12th degree of Leo, that's the range that this Venus will be going retrograde for. And self-esteem, I think, self-esteem is key when it comes to Leo, right? Leo at best has a strong sense of self-esteem. When there is a strong sense of self-esteem, Leo doesn't have to be the attention seeker, that shadowy side of Leo that is horrible, that we don't really appreciate. And that's usually the jokes and the memes that we see, the astrological memes that we see about Leo. That's potentially the worst of Leo. Leo is about generosity. Leo rules the heart as well, which I guess is another key element of these Venus retrograde. Where do you put your heart into? You know, does it make your heart sing? Is it aligned with your values and heart-centered or not? And the area or the house where Venus will go retrograde will have something to say. The house where Leo is on the cusp will be involved as well. You know, where is Leo in your chart? Because this Venus retrograde will have something connected to it, you know? So where is Leo in your chart? Do you have any planets in Leo? They're going to be revisited. They're going to have this process of being like, am I aligned with my values here? One of the main questions of this Venus retrograde. Are you aligned with your values in that area, in that house, with that planet? Are you expressing that planet in a, you know, sort of wholesome way or not? So let's put some keywords here with Leo, right? Leo is majestic, proud. It has to do with dignity as well. Are you dignified? Are you expressing yourself with dignity as well? Again, another shadow side of Leo is a sense of self-importance, feeling better than others. And that, again, that's usually masking a lack of self-esteem. When we need to keep saying how well, how good, how amazing we are, that's usually a lack, right? It's like a donut. There's a hole in the middle. The sense of self is empty. So we need that validation from others. So that's the worst. That's the shadow. And we'll have an opportunity to look into that during that Venus retrograde, yeah? In relation to values, in relation to all of that. So recognition will be Leonine as well. Our quest for self-discovery is Leo themed. And which ways the self is unique and important? How unique are you in that area where Leo is? The house cusp of Leo, where Venus will be going retrograde in Leo as well. Those are the questions, you know, about your uniqueness and how aligned are you and how expressive are you of that uniqueness and specialness as well. So a lack of self-esteem makes an attention seeker versus confidence and courage, which is the best of Leo as well, right? Courage, confidence. The grounded confidence that Brené Brown talks about. You know, it doesn't have anything to do with proving anything, but is grounded. Is grounded confidence, you know? Grounded confidence is about learning, being open to learn something rather than trying to prove something all the time, to prove that you're right. And, you know, there's an openness with that sense of grounded confidence. Leo has to do with leadership, creativity, and drama as well. And it can be drama as a negative or drama as a performance, you know. I went to a musical and I thought, oh my God, Leo, pure Leo there, you know. The entertainment, the joy that they were bringing to me by being there, by singing, and, you know, it really made me think about Leo at best, you know, that performance, the musical. And the house where Leo is in the cusp, we'll be talking about where we are alive, illuminated, where to be generous as well, and where we can be proud of as well, because pride has a connection with Leo as well, something to be proud of, you know, proud to share with others as well. So those are some of the themes there with Leo and with the Venus in Leo as well. Now we think about Venus, all the themes that I shared with you in this video, and we join that with Leo that I just talked about. I just touched on the surface a little bit here, and we bring those together, and then we place that in our charts. Okay, so we'll be placing that in our charts with part 2, which will be coming next. I'll be doing part 2 as soon as I take a little break, have a little water. But in the meantime, make me, you know, give me some comments, questions as well, if you have any questions about that. If you have any planets in Leo, if you know where Leo is in your chart, let me know, share with me in the comments, and I'll be very happy to see and to have a discussion, you know, have further discussion. So I'll be taking a break, but I'll come back with part 2, which is Venus in the houses based on your ascendant. So I'll be seeing you soon. Bye bye now.